So, in my pre birth plan, I chose a very hard life of chronic illness, depression, paranormal craziness for 16, 17 years before my near death experience. So, I grew up for 20 years believing I have an incurable disorder. I learned how to break that contract, but at the same time, it was also in play that I would break that contract.
Hi, my name is Brianna Lafferty, and I had a near death experience in 2017. So, the day of my near death experience was April 27th, 2017, at 2 in the morning. I was very sick and I was dealing with fighting some crazy universal things against me, and I couldn't do it anymore. I had already been sick with a chronic illness for 16 years. I had been medicating for those 16 years in different ways. And I had these paranormal things that were just giving me basically hell on earth. So at 2 in the morning, I surrendered completely. I called out to the only God I knew that existed or might exist and said, I can't do this anymore. So I surrendered completely with my soul, my heart, and my body. And then I heard this big booming voice say, Are you ready? I realized something had answered my prayer. And so, yes, I'm ready. Ready for what? I don't know, but I'm ready. And so I felt 3 hard pounds on my chest. And just like that, my heart had stopped and I was separated from my body. So I go into an incredible, profound experience. I'm immediately in this black, velvety void, just full of love and energy. And I'm with the creator or God or source or the universe, whatever your beliefs, you know, have you believe is the creator, where we're come from, who created us, where we're from. And I get this question like, for a second, am I dead? I then go through this beautiful, vibrant blue tunnel filled with ones and zeros. I'm going at it like supersonic speed, and I'm being downloaded with information and binary code. And I just knew that it would be the code that I would need sometime later, which I didn't understand the concept of later because there was no concept of time. I then end up in a white room. I call it a room, but it has no doors, no windows, no walls, no floors. So it's this space, and there's this great master teacher behind me. And I relate this master teacher to the likeness of Krishna, Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, the master teachers. And in front of me is a big pile of numbers. And I realize the universe is created in math. And I pick up these numbers and throw it up like I am a little child, just no wonder you love creating. And I realized that the universe is created in math and code and programs. And I don't know why I found that so exciting, but I really did. I then end up in a space with other beings. And the reason I say beings instead of humans is because I have no idea if they're ever human. I didn't remember that I was ever a human. But there are other souls in existing in this same space, the same dimension with me, next to me, experiencing things with me. I see some sliding down these beautiful trees covered in snow. I'm like, I don't think I like snow. And instantly it's turned to lush green, and I'm sliding down the trees next to these other beings, realizing they might be sliding down snow, even though I see green, that we could have these different experiences simultaneously together. We are also we also danced, and we danced together as if we'd been choreographing these movements for millennium. No one spoke. but no one needed to. Thought instantly happened. Everyone was one. Everyone moved as one, communicated as one. There was, you could hear without speaking, and you can talk without listening. And it was just absolutely amazing. It was more than telepathy. You think of telepathy as having a thought, someone reading it, then sending it back, and you reading that thought. But it was so instantaneous that telepathy really um, isn't really the right word. There was also a time where I tried to learn to fly and I was awful at it. I ended up hitting a pole and severing my arm, and there's no pain. So I was just curious, like, oh, what's going to happen? And I see my arm regrow in ones and zeros in code, in program. And this place was just filled with curiosity and joy and love. And it was a place of learning and experiencing. And there was no judgment, there was no anger, there was no fear, there was no pain. So, when I lost my arm for a second, it wasn't scary. It was just like, oh, huh, that's interesting. And then watching it grow back was absolutely fascinating. Um, this is the area I spent the most amount of my experience in. Like I said, there's no time, so I can't really say how much time I spent in there. Um, there were beings working, on stores and on crafts, and they were in different bodies. It was just absolutely a place of learning and excitement. After the space, here you could see through a barbed wire fence. You could see what's on the other side. You could see if there's a farm or cows or a mountain or a house. But in this dimension, I couldn't see beyond. It was really fuzzy. It was all blurry. And a lot of these beings were going through an opening in this fence on a land bridge.
So as these beings are going through the transition and the fence, and I can't go, I end up in the last place in my experience. And this is in another place that felt like a room with seven magnificent, powerful entities. I still don't know exactly who they are. I haven't really heard any similar stories. I've got some ideas, but it's 6.5 years later, and I'm still trying to find out who these powerful beings were. But in front of me, there's this beautiful scroll that's unrolled, and the beautiful floating golden script being written out in front of me. And I know it's something huge, it's something important. And that's when my ego came back. And so this whole time in my experience, I was separate from my ego. Well, in this last area, unfolding probably the wisdom of the centuries, the wisdom of the universe, my ego comes back and says, "Ha, you're showing this to a human." And just like that, the scroll rolled up and I was snapped back into my body. And 8 minutes later, I felt my heart start again. Um, but it felt like I had been gone from my body for so long. I didn't know exactly what happened or where I went. I was just positive if I opened my eyes, I was going to be buried and I was going to have to figure out how to climb out of a coffin out of the ground. I thought it'd been weeks or months. Um, when I finally built up the courage to open my eyes, I looked at the time and it had only been 8 minutes. So, through a lot of self exploration, through a lot of studying, especially with the IONS Association and other associations that study near death experiences, hearing other people's stories, I found that I not only have a purpose of coming here, but we all do. And we, for the most part, all have a pre birth plan that we put in um, very particular points in our life for learning opportunities for our soul. So with me, So, in my pre birth plan, I chose a very hard life of chronic illness, depression, paranormal craziness for 16, 17 years before my near death experience. Why do we choose such horrific things? It's purely for learning. So, the people who have had some of the hardest battles become the strongest healers. The people who have, you know, a blade doesn't get waged or forged in one hit, in one round in the fire. The strongest, sharpest blades go through the fire over and over again and get pounded over and over again. Only through this trial and this hardship and the hurt and the pain does it become so strong and so sharp. Oftentimes it's like, why didn't I choose an easier life? Um, and some people do choose easier lives. That's their soul journey. But my soul journey was to go through hell so that I could I could really appreciate the heaven side of this, the heaven side of souls, and not just appreciate it, but help pull other people out of their hells. So that is my soul's journey is I had to experience the hurt and the pain and the loss and the grief and overcome it to be able to help other people overcome their own. Soul contracts are created mostly by your individual soul. We do also travel with soul clusters and people we will sign contracts with. So, my mom and I have this conversation because she suffered a lot watching me suffer as a child and her being a mother who couldn't, do much to comfort her own child. And since then, we've realized that we signed this contract together, that we would be on this journey together. She would play the role as my mother, my advocate, my warrior, and I would play the role as the chronic ill child. So, I made the contract of what I would experience, but I also made it with her. And she made her own contract that she was going to have her own soul education and growth through the experiences I had. So we made this contract together. A lot of people do. A lot of even abusers and abusees will have soul contracts, unfortunately. I mean, it sounds so unfortunate here in the world as we experience it, but everything we do, whether it's good or every experience we have, whether it's good, it's painful, it's negative, it's all learning experiences for our soul. And usually we sign that with another person. Um, and it becomes very hard for people to hear when they're like, well, how could a soul do this? How could a soul be so hurtful? But it usually comes in the pre-birth plan and contracts and agreements that you both want to learn different things throughout those experiences and those interactions. um, like I said with my mom and I, her soul's grown so much, just watching my journey and being with me on my journey. And without her, I wouldn't have made it this far on my journey. So some people, um, they were given a choice. They were, they had an accident or they overdosed on drugs and they were given a choice. Like, I'm not going back to that awful life I was living. There's no way. They were given a choice. Well, okay, you can choose to not go back to that person, but you're going to have to redo it all over again as a baby. Even in religions, there are theories and speculations that if you do commit suicide, you'll be slingshotted right back into the same life until you live your life fully and experience all the things your soul meant to experience. I haven't really heard of any people who have committed suicide or trying to commit suicide that were able to come back with a new soul contract. Um, the whole reason we have this human experience is to learn. And if you cut that learning short, you're often just rethrown back into school. We can definitely repair these hurts and these contracts, and that is usually in the plan to repair it. If you think you need to break out of this contract, it's probably already in your plan to break free of these circumstances. So for me, my illness was considered incurable. So I grew up for 20 years believing I have an incurable disorder. I learned how to break that contract, but at the same time, it was also in play that I would break that contract. So there is no time in the other realm. And so we can simultaneously be breaking and making contracts. You can talk to your higher self, get into communication, say, you know what, I'm done with this. Let's reroute. And that is both a very now instance of breaking the contract, as well as it could be your soul said, we're going to break the contract. We're going to break this experience at this point in the life. So it's kind of a dual approach to these traumas and these experiences we have. We are not stuck in any one of them. We can have that conversation with our higher self and our soul and be like, I'm done. And you can definitely change the momentum of the rest of your life. There are different ways to break out of this contract and this program and this pain that we're in. Um, there are a few ways of doing it. One is, past life regression, so that you can understand what lessons your souls are trying to learn. And so you'll often see a similar pattern in many soul reincarnations. If you believe in reincarnations, past life regression can show you a pattern and help you figure out what you're meant to learn. So when you figure out what the lesson is, it's usually a much easier way of approaching it and coming at it with compassion and ease. You can also do hypnosis, and that will get you to your subconscious and your higher self. You can use your subconscious to start to change your world around you. You can also use meditation. I would recommend meditation modalities a little bit stronger than hypnosis. Hypnosis just goes to your subconscious mostly, where meditation you can really get to your soul. You can get to your higher self. You can have conversations with your guides, your angels, basically your soul, and be like, okay, we're done with this. Let's do something different. So that is how I broke out of my chronic illness. Is I did a meditation retreat where I really learned how to meditate, go within, break free of my body, and have that conversation with my higher self and my soul. So that is what worked for me. There are also, if you have tried it and you just don't feel very confident in it, or you still need more practice and you're really done. You're really done with the suffering. There are very skilled mediums and psychics who can help you talk to your higher self, get you into Akashic records, have conversation with your guides, and help you either break free of your contract or figure out what lessons you're meant to learn. And that will also change the directory of your life. Thank you all so much for listening. I really hope you break free of whatever is ailing you and what you're suffering from.